2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Princess.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We're sorry we're a few minutes late. I was running behind because I forgot what time it was. And yeah, you know how that works sometimes. So we're a little cluster-fuddled tonight, trying to make sure that everything goes on without a hitch and that type of a thing. So, but anyway, welcome to episode 262. Tonight we have a pretty jam-packed episode. We are going to be talking about a few things. We're going to give an update on the stimulus. We're going to talk about International Women's Day. We have a segment about Amazon and the boycott this week. And I have a unique twist to it. I'm doing something a little bit different because I don't know. When I first heard about the boycott, I didn't know how on board I was. Normally, I'm just on board with that type of stuff. And it's like, yep, we should be boycotting. We should get into this. This is something we want to do. But after reading some articles and going through things, I think we could boycott this week and that's fine, but we need a longer term solution. And that's kind of what our year has been committed to. It's the year of pushing progressive social changes. And what the fuck just didn't happen? Oh, well, we didn't get $15 an hour. So we already are on the outs here. And if Bernie were here, there'd be a little guy in my corner sitting there with his gloves on, big frown on his face, saying, I've been doing this for 40 years, and you still don't listen. But before we get any further into that topic, we're going to bring in our hostess with the mostest, Mr. Chris, the guy with the big eyebrows and the unkept hair. Hannah, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I cannot smell what the Rock is cooking, yet I am also still ready to have ourselves a nice Tuesday night thinking festival of ideas and things.
Yeah. And on the other side of me, or maybe on the other side of Hannah, we're bringing in our next co-host, Mr. Buddy, the stares off into space and doesn't seem to ever pay attention when we bring him into the show, the Lumberjack. How are you tonight, sir?
Oh, I'm just happy to be here, guys.
Are you glad I didn't call you an elf today? You feel a little bit better? Did I help?
I mean, I wasn't gonna say anything because I figure if I draw attention to it, it's just gonna encourage you.
Anyway, so welcome to the show. Tonight, like I said, we have a great show planned. But before we get too far into it, I know, and it's kind of funny, in the pre-show, I guess, you guys were talking a little bit about, Hannah, your job and your work and things that have been going on in your life, and some of your feelings, which is a little unusual for you. Usually Hannah doesn't give us too many feels, except for, like, Christmas. He's like the Grinch on Christmas, and like
it's year round.
Is it? Do you have like a Grinch suit or like a little like hat or shirt you put on and your daughters go, Daddy's in a bad mood today. He's got his Grinch.
Not so much that. It's just like I have my Grinch pajama pants and I have a bunch of old Holy ICP t-shirts and I just look like a grumpy clown who just doesn't want anything to do with whatever, holiday is fast approaching. Like this weekend we went to the Museum of Natural History in Cleveland and I finally got a chance to check Cleveland's claims that they got some legit stuff in there, and oh, it was nice. So like, if it's a holiday and we get to do things like learning and go places and do stuff like that, or maybe make our own gifts, I'm all for it. But if it's just shiny things we ordered from the internets and interwebs and Jeff Bezos's minions, I'm not interested in those things. And my association with like all of the warm feelings for most of the holidays, which are Judeo-Christian. I don't have that like I don't have a nostalgic bone in my body for that stuff because it didn't mean anything when I was a kid. So like, I just don't feel it. Like Halloween, Thanksgiving sucks because like the whole time you're there, you're like, oh, like
well, it's funny. I actually just got invited to church, and it was ironic because the person I was having a conversation with hasn't invited us in years. They invited us to Easter, and it's like, no, thank you. I don't want to go. Well, our church takes precautions. I get that. I haven't been to church, honestly, except for maybe a wedding, and I can't remember if it was in a church or not. But other than that, I haven't been in a church in at least 6 years. Like, we don't go to church. Like, I'm not going to go to church. I don't have any interest in it. I don't even do it to appease people. I used to do it to appease people. I sure as hell don't do that no more. And it was just kind of funny because I was like, no, it's okay. Well, don't say no. You should ask your kids and your wife. Yeah, pretty sure the answer's still going to be no. Like, hey, girls, do you want to get up early, dress up fancy, and then have to go sit and listen to somebody talk about somebody you don't believe in who died for 2 hours? You might get a little bit of candy, but do you want to sit there and shut the fuck up for 2 hours? Or do you just want to stay home and eat candy and watch Bob's Burgers? Or Simpsons? I don't care. Pick your Easter episode, show.
And I went to a baptism the other day, like it was a couple weeks ago or something, and like the church was not as social distance as I was hoping, and there's a portion of my family who refuses to wear masks. Absolutely will not. And but like at the very beginning of it, this is actually funny because like the whole time, like I had mask on and scowl down, I was ready to go. But like that was the first time I've been in a long time. And the guy, the first, there were two dudes. I don't know if they're like tag team, like their own hip hop group. But they the first guy came out and he was very Ken Hamish. So right out of the gate, first sentence that he basically had was talking about the nonsense of evolution and in a way that was kind of coded. So I was like, oh, right out of the gate, here we go. And then basically a couple of sentences later, when I'm just kind of like listening to him, he said that if there's anything in this book that you have a problem with, that you want to cherry pick and toss out and that you can't keep and that you have an issue with, then you aren't a true believer and you don't honestly believe. And I was like, oh, I like that. Everyone in here has got a couple things they don't like anymore. This guy is coming perilously close to an honest and a sincere thought. And I was just like, so like I smiled and I don't remember who looked at me, like my wife or my kid or something. Your wife probably. And like but it was like unmasked. So I was like,
oh. So all she could just see was like the corner of your eyes do the smile for you because the rest of your face was hiding. It's like
all I wanted to do was like record it and like text you guys while I was in there. I was like, the preacher just said if I don't have a problem with any part of that's what it was. He said if you have a problem with any part of this book, then what's the point? Was basically what he said. Yes, that's it. You're like, I can go home now.
That's when you raise your hand and go, I just need 5 minutes. Can I have 5 minutes, please? Can I have 5 minutes? Yeah. I want to take a survey. It's for
Psalm 139. When they smash the kids' heads against the rocks, I got a problem with that. So can we just leave? Can we go now?
Well, you should just challenge the whole congregation. I want 5 minutes, and you pick out all your verses. You're like, here, all right, who believes this is good? Who believes it? And then when nobody raises their hand, you'd be like, oh, you're all baby killers? Good. I thought you were all pro-life. Where'd this come from? Like you would immediately they would drag you off the stage with one of those big hook things. Like,
are you pro-life? Are you pro-life when Lot's daughters drunkenly sexed him up?
Yeah.
Awkward.
Or when
talk about ye old Pornhub tags.
Son. Or when God said we're gonna kill you for wearing mixed fabric, or I mean, I don't know. We could go on and on.
My poly blend is great for work.
Well, my weekend consists of X-Wing, a board game I play, and look at that handsome devil. Look at that. I finally got my hair cut, and my sister does my beard. She showed me how to tease my beard so that it'll look like that every day. I won't tell you I have the interest in doing that. That was like 10 minutes of work, and usually a beard is because I lazy. not
It's
as,
because you didn't want to do 10 minutes of work.
Yeah. But I went and got my hair cut. She's like, "Let me trim your beard." I was like, "All right." And she goes, "Oh, and let me comb it out and show you how good it looks." And it's like, all right, that does look pretty good, you know, like I won't
I mean,
lie.
it is impressive. It's very impressive.
All you need now is some of that whatever that stuff is that like thicken up and like it's like a beard wax almost or something.
Oh,
Not like a
yes.
wax, but like
I use a moisturizer and it's not technically wax, it's like beard balm is what they call it.
it's like a condition thing that keeps like moisture into the hair follicles and
Yeah,
stuff
I
like
use
that.
both those. It's in that beard right there. I had to put it in there.
Pretty slick, man.
Well done.
So Keith, what'd you do on your wannabe days off?
Well, I mean, other than getting into a Twitter fight with somebody who thought not wanting to date somebody who's trans is the same as not wanting to date a child molester, that was fun. Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, it's one of those, and this is why I used to get pissed off when people said, people who are self-proclaimed skeptics are just the worst. I used to just roll my eyes, and after dealing with somebody who's had skeptic in the handle, and they just used word salad after word salad after word salad to try to justify why, that's not a bigoted claim and why I'm the problem and why I owe them an apology for deliberately misrepresenting their point. And I'm like, dude, you literally said it's like dating somebody who's a child molester and not finding out until later. If it's just something that you don't want. And I'm like, that's what you said. And he goes, well, you're not addressing my points. And I'm like, I don't have to, because here. And he just kept going on and going on. And finally, to shut the whole thing down, I was like, look, dude, if you're going to keep talking out of your ass, your next response is going to be a picture of my ass. Okay. And then he blocked me. So that was fun.
You know what I've been doing?
That's a good threat.
I block people that are really, really bad. Like I in the past, I would just never do it. I didn't block anyone. And after a while, just like, I don't have mental health issues where I have stress problems or anything like that. It's been lucky. I've always been okay. And so I've never noticed anything, but I do find that I am significantly happier when I don't go down these the really bad ones. And so like Dan Finke is an awesome skeptic philosopher. He used to be part of the group The Camels with Hammers, I think it was. And he just an awesome guy online. He's a teacher. I believe he's in Europe now. And he had a kid not too long ago. His page is what I kind of try to make my page like. It's I keep people who may be contrarians to my perspective and point of view, but when they're contrary, they're intelligent, and I can't, and it doesn't turn into like a yelling battle match, and it makes it so much better. So like, if you are conversing with someone online, that it's a real conversation. It may be contentious, it may be abrasive, but at least it's not devolving into child schoolyard fighting. And I find like the battles online, like I don't have like the really, really gross people that I'm interacting with. I still keep my subreddits in the conspiracy subreddits, and because that was basically taken over by the Donald, and so that's now the Donald. It's just, and so like the conspiracies on that end, but like I do that so that I can see the people that I don't want to converse with and see what they're saying without actually having to talk to them. And Facebook, and I just keep those people away from my social media on Facebook, I find it's so much better. Oh my gosh. I saw the comment, and I'm like, why would you make that comparison? Like, that's just two things that, one, don't need to be compared ever, and two, that's not even a comparison. That's just not a bloody comparison. So after all was said and done from that one, I just went and spent 10 minutes playing with the 2.5-month-old kitten that my wife and I adopted last week.
I think it goes back to the fact that what they're doing is trolling you. Like, I don't know how to say it. Like, it's a troll comment. That's a troll comment, man. Like, there's nothing in there.
That was the thing, though, that really drove me up the wall about this, is because it was somebody who, like, I recognize the way they talk as soon as they responded to me, and I'm like, oh, you're gonna double down on this. This is gonna be interesting. Because if anybody's ever taken philosophy in university, arguing with anybody in those classes are the absolute friggin' worst for hoping for some sort of a reasonable individual to talk to, because it's I don't have to be right. I just have to talk around you enough until you give up. And I reached a point and I flat out said, I said, look, this isn't philosophy. I'm not some drunk woman you're trying to take advantage of at a party. I'm somebody who's recognizing your bullshit. I know you don't like that, but you're gonna have to deal with it. And and oh look, Hannah just left apparently now. Okay, bye.
Sorry,
No,
sorry, I had to reset my mic.
Yeah, but yeah, I was just like, why double down? Why die on that hill of all hills? I mean, it just. Yeah. I thought that was kind of the point of skepticism, was, humility enough to go, hey, yeah, I said a dumb thing. I shouldn't have said that. I'm not going to say that again because that's dumb. But, apparently not.
Exactly. I don't know. I agree with you. I try to stay away from some of those weird things, just because if you don't, you're going to spend all day. So, for example, I have a limit of how many responses I'll give on Twitter or Facebook to certain people, because I have conservatives on my page, and like this whole Dr. Seuss thing, which we didn't even cover really that much.
Because there's no point.
I made one statement, and man, this dude just wouldn't leave it alone. So, like, I don't know.
I have one of the books.
Later, I do not. A week later, I made another statement, right? And, I didn't call the guy out. I didn't tag him, nothing. But I'll tell you what, he sought my page out, and he found my comment where I was like, yeah, this guy wouldn't let this thing go, and he doesn't understand why this isn't racist. And he brought the exact same argument back in there, again, saying, I have a Asian friend who doesn't find this racist, therefore it's not racist. And it's like, oh my God. All right, we're done. You're just done. I don't know. You're done. So that's how that works.
It's a really strange logic to follow on that one, but whatever. I have the Mulberry Street one. That's one of the ones we have, and we have talked about it. Actually, I have actually talked about that with my daughters. That book is really good to read, minus that one line. The other lines in the other books, or the other books themselves, were way more like the caricature African American blackface, exaggerated lip stuff. Those ones were really blatant. The Mulberry Street one was like, oh, when we would read that, and we talked about it. I used it as like an educational thing, that this was written a long time ago. Like, this book was I'm surprised that one was in it, but I get it. And so, like, I don't know, like, it's one of those things that, like, I have just as many problems with a couple other books that we read, and like, and talking about it with the girls, that they're not Dr. Seuss, but it's there's a thing that in older literature that you see way more. So it'd be interesting to reconsider a lot of these children's books for the future, in all reality.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's all. That's the whole point of some of it. It's not cancel culture. It's discussion time, and we're just going to hold you accountable and that type of a thing.
Yeah, it was the Seuss Foundation that pulled them. It wasn't like people saying no. Is the people who own the books were like, listen, it's time to change this. We're gonna pull these. Like, it was them being considerate. Like, it wasn't like the bookseller saying, we're canceling you. That's the other thing. So it's interesting. Like, they own the books, and they said no more, and everybody's like, you're canceling. Well, we own them. They're ours. We can do whatever we want with them. And it's just like,
just so you guys know, you know how to properly pronounce his name, right? It's not Seuss.
Is it Swiss?
Sois.
Okay.
Yep.
No, I don't care. I guess I don't. It's Dr. Seuss. That's what everybody says. So.
But everybody's wrong.
There's the Berenstain Bears and the Berenstain Bears, and that weird kind of, the Stein. Well, they like the weird thing where they flipped the spelling of the name, so it was like it was weird because like Stein is particularly associated with Jewish culture, and there's like this switch when it went from Stein to Stain, and if you look at it now, it's AIN. And so people are like, when did this happen? What is going on? And it's crazy. And nobody really knows. Someone may have found the reason it was changed or something like that. But like the name culture and stuff is that if the culture eventually says something enough, it's like the British call it aluminium. And there's no extra I in there. But
Anyway,
Aluminium.
we're going to move past the Dr. Seuss.
And it's laboratory.
Maybe it is.
Only the Dexter.
Well, it's from his. I think it might be from his background because I'm waiting for my computer to actually friggin' pull this up. I've been waiting for a few minutes. This is how crappy my computer is now.
All right.
Yeah, it's hopeless.
I'm making the measurement. We're moving on because I don't care about Dr. Seuss anymore. Sorry, and I'm not going to say it the way you want me to say it. It's not going to happen. Maybe in the after show you can argue with me more, but. This today actually, and while we're recording, today is the day. It is International Women's Day, and I always kind of like to celebrate, for the month, for the week, with different little things. And I think it was important that we kind of talk a little bit about it because this year their campaign is Choose to Challenge. A challenged world isn't an alert world. Individually, we're all responsible for our own thoughts and actions all day and every day. My action is, I'm going to say Dr. Seuss, and that's going to upset Keith's world.
Boo.
Boo. We can all choose to challenge or call out gender bias and inequality. We can choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements. Collectively, we can all help create an inclusive world. And this year I'm a little excited. It's not as exciting as I wanted it to be, but we have to submit ideas as when you're in management for improvement things as well as like seminar topics that can be presented to our clients in logistics, right? And our company, in fairness, has been pretty diverse when it came to gender. And that's not just saying we gave some low-level positions to women. Like there's a couple of women that sit on the executive management team. We have a lot of operations managers that are women, so our company, in fairness, is pretty diverse when it comes to that. How they get paid, I don't know. But we at least have that diversity. And so at the beginning of the year, we had a brainstorming session, my group, and we were talking through things. And I say, well, on my show, I do, we always talk about International Women's Day. It's November. Let's create something, let's do something for it. And that kind of got back to our marketing director, and they're going to be putting out a seminar where they allow some of the different women to talk about their unique experiences in our industry, which logistics and transportation is usually heavily male dominated. So
welcome to engineering, bro.
Yeah. So it's
manufacturing.
It was kind of nice that they actually took our group's idea and ran with it. To some extent.
That is cool. That is really cool.
And I'm excited to see it. They asked me like, well, what part do you want me to play? And I'm like, well, just tell me what you want me to do. I'll be the guy recording it in the background. How about that? Like, I know how to do audio and video recording. I can help you there if that's what you want. Like I can help spruce up your very boring seminars.
Well, the proposition there is just like someone saying, "Okay, man, male person, what would you like? How would you want to run this?" And they're like, this man is not running International Women's Day. Yeah. Some woman will be doing it, and I will be in a supporting position." Like, you know what I mean?
Their idea is they just wanted me to feel included, which was nice, because, and I said that's fair, like I'll give you ideas when I have them, but like in reality, let me know what you want to do for promotion or other things. Like
that's cool.
That's what we do. But this year, the Choose to Challenge is not. I don't think this is like an off the charts, ultra unique proposition. I think what they're doing is saying, hey, we've been telling you to vocalize. Now we're saying now you need to choose to vocalize, right? We're done asking, all this time to say, hey, why don't you volunteer to do it? This year they're saying let's do this? Why don't you take the challenge? So show your hand, show your support.
If you see something, say something. Becoming, an active participant in your workplace. Is that kind of what they're thinking?
Yes. Yep. Call out inequality. Challenge some of the, they're saying, hey, strike a pose, raising your hand, send it in. They're going to be putting it up, and there's a button right on here. They have a discussion starter, which they actually shared internally with our group. Not our group, I'm sorry, our company internally. They said, hey, here's how you can be a part of this, special day. They have a gallery. I mean, you can go through, maybe we can go through, there you go. You can go through the different gallery, and they kind of tell these are who the people are. What are they doing? And, it's just what they're
maybe we'll do that picture with my daughters too. That'd be really cool if they don't know this exists. And so this could be something that I could do with my daughters and like get them as like, if you have young women in your family to like start participating in something like this, and you maybe show a positive thing that maybe some little girls haven't seen. This could be a really strong, self-esteem builder. That's pretty cool.
Yes. And so what they're saying is we're no longer going to accept norms. Let's call them out when we see them, and let's not all be silent about that. And that's again,
Viva la Revolution!
The theme of this year, to some extent, on our side is how do we move progressive ideas? Well, part of our progressive ideas have to include gender and wage disparity amongst people that are not male, because it's a fact that white men typically get paid more, and that for me that's a big thing, because and my son asked, and I was like, I challenge you to call that shit out at work. Like you guys have your team huddles, and if somebody makes, your boss is a woman, and if they make fun of her, you should call them out and be like, why do you got to do that in front of everybody else? Like why why are you insulting this way?
Or if you're in a group of guys and someone makes a joke, that's something that is, I mean, like, even if there isn't a woman that or somebody that's being associated, like if the joke and the topic is something that you wouldn't say to your HR department director, or you wouldn't say in front of your mother or your grandmother, you know what I mean? Like sometimes like guy jokes are guy jokes, but disparaging jokes and
right.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like guy jokes can be guy jokes about dude things like farts and dicks and whatever, but like they don't have to be disparaging, and they don't have to, be attacking any one group or one gender or any one, thing. And so like that could be something that you just say, like, because that's one of the first things that I was like, wow, Ohio. I see a lot more. I got a lot more of that than I ever got in Michigan, which maybe is not particularly associated with the region, but man, I don't know. Just something in life in general, it's different. Yeah,
Ohio, man.
I don't know.
I remember I'm from Ohio. So,
I know that's.
I think you're right, and I think one of the big things here, is right, like, and that's what I was telling my son today too, is like, well, when somebody shuts another person down, even if they're not shutting the woman down because they're specifically because it's a woman, they're just shutting it down because they don't want the idea. You should speak up and say, hey, at least let her have her say. Like she gets an opinion too, because they have these group discussions, and I hear things, from him like if I were that manager, I'd put it into half that shit. Be like, hey, not only are you guys all sitting here making shit up to take a 5-minute meeting to a half hour, and I know that, but you sure as hell aren't going to cut all these other people off and monopolize the time just to talk about things you want to talk about. And when they don't agree with you, you want to argue about it? I mean, come on, but the idea here is, and you could, I kind of thought it was interesting, the sponsors this year. There seems to either be less or they're not displaying as many, but they're prominent sponsor, like McDonald's is a prominent sponsor, but I don't see McDonald's as somebody that goes out of the way to, do the whole let's make equality happen type thing.
McDonald's is one
in
of
all
those giant
fairness, they
companies
screw
that
over
puts money
everybody
everywhere.
equally, so there's that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's a good point, Keith.
Yeah, like some of those companies are like the biggest company. Amazon donates money to Fox News and NPR. Like, they just,
That's kind of more. I think that's more about like tax write-offs anything.
all of that, and like this kind of thing here, like, do you be able to put like a logo or like a little like feather in your cap? These corporations, in a lot of cases, like the really really big ones, this is just like, is it sincere? I doubt it. So I mean,
So
It's lip service. It's like Bell's Let's Talk Day. Where
okay,
they-
did anybody
they-
see
they-
the tweet that came out earlier?
Oh God, yeah.
Like the Burger King
No.
tweet, they deleted it now.
oh no, what did BK do? What did the king do?
The execution
That
was
the
so
man,
terrible.
UK one.
So what BK did was they first tweeted out "Women belong in the kitchen," and then they added a tweet in response, 2 tweets in
Oh,
response to
no.
that, saying if that's what they want to do, if that's their choice, otherwise,
you can't separate them.
exactly. And it was such poor execution. Like even if they had at least said, if they were going to do that, they should have at least said, in the first tweet, "Women belong in the kitchen." ... Enter. If that's what they want.
Yeah, one tweet. Yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
you know what?
One
It's
tweet.
funny watching.
here.
It's funny watching people
See?
on the internet who are not old enough to understand the internet try to pretend to be the Wendy's Twitter page. That's
Oh,
what
God.
I'll say.
Yeah, whoever runs that, I still really want to shake their hand.
I
'Cause They're
haven't-
just
I haven't seen as many good burns from the Wendy's Twitter page as I used to see, because I used to see a lot of them. But like, oh, man, that is so bad. Oh, when I was
did
in
you guys
college,
watch?
when I was in college, one of the guys, we were all like a whole group of us were cooking in the kitchen, and one of the girls she was much more progressive and women's rights and those kinds of things, and one of the guys who was just a drudge report jackass. He saw her in the kitchen and he's like, it's nice to see you in the kitchen where you belong. And that was like a throw the knife down on the floor and walk out of the kitchen moment. Like, just like, you don't say that. That's a terrible. Why? How did that even get approved? Like, the official Twitter of a major corporation should have like 7 people, 10 people that it goes through before it ever gets the submit button ever gets pushed.
And
I
I'm
don't
sorry, but
understand.
at least one of those people needs to be a 12-year-old, simply because, or not just one, like a room full of 12-year-olds, simply because if there is any innuendo, they don't have the social graces to not say anything.
Yeah.
They will laugh. And if they laugh, you know that either it's brilliant or you've got to go back to the drawing board. Oh, actually, just a side note. Today Wendy's tweeted out secure hashtag secure the, and then they put the emoji bag, and somebody responded with, "What if my bag is from Burger King?" They responded back, "Then you're a grade A clown." So there you go. There's some good clapbacks coming from Wendy's still.
All right. So if you would like to take the challenge, the website's in the links in the description. You can click on it, submit your photo. You can share your stories with us if you'd like. We'll be happy to share them.
Awesome.
Anything. The next topic, and we're going to go really quick over this, and I'm only going over it because we were speculating last week about the $15 hour wage, and I don't care about anything else. I mean, this is what drives me nuts sometimes about conservatives, and I had to take a specific somebody who's definitely older to the doctor today, and the first thing out of their mouth is, "Did you see what Biden's pushing through now?" And it's like, yep. Trump would have done the same thing if he thought it would have saved his presidency. Trust me.
Yeah.
But whatever. And then he proceeded to say, like, we just grow money on trees. And it's like, well, that's not how this works. I don't actually agree with a lot of the stuff in the bill. I do agree that we need to do something. I would rather just have UBI for those that need it and move on. He's like, where are we going to ever come up with that money? I was like, well, I can tell you right now, Amazon doesn't pay almost anything. I think I pay more in taxes than Amazon pays.
Zero corporate taxes.
Apple is pretty close to the same thing. And between those two in corporate taxes, we probably could fund UBI even on a small scale. And we're going to get into UBI tonight because I found somebody that I am in love with, and we're going to have a conversation. And the irony is he's actually a self-proclaimed Marxist. And I had to message Corey that we had on the show like a month ago and be like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this guy?" you should check this dude out. Let me know your thoughts, because we're going to discuss him tonight, and you might have to come back on because we're going to really discuss him like in depth, because I haven't gone through his whole life, so there could be some troubling things. I don't know. But he is, in my opinion, who originated the UBI discussion before Yang even showed up making it popular. Now, I know other people have led that charge too, but nobody's been very successful until Yang showed up. So I'd be very interested to know if this is where Yang gets his, theology, because it's from basically like a sociology professor.
What's the guy's name?
The guy's name, that we're going to talk about, Eric Olin Wright.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know you don't know who he is. It's okay.
Not a clue.
But
But it sounded like Rupert Bregman for a second. I was like, I've talked about that guy, but
yeah, we did. You're right. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, because we are gonna go down that rabbit hole later, the Senate passed a different America Rescue Plan, and I hate these fucking plan names. I hate them. I hate it. You're
straight
not gonna
out
rescue
of
America.
the movie House of Cards, you could hear
Yeah,
Kevin Spacey saying
I
them,
know.
and it'll make you just feel gross.
It'd be even worse. I mean, in fairness, Chuck Schumer looks like a Kevin Spacey in that picture.
oh,
Yeah. So, anyways,
he doesn't rape guys, but anyway.
Mm,
So
ugh.
what happened is they changed it up, and now they sent it back to the House, and I have not heard what the House's vote on it was today, and I don't care. We'll talk about that next week if we have to. But essentially, this is a $1.9 trillion act to rescue America. Oh my God, I can't even say it without laughing.
America Rescue Plan Act. What the hell?
And inside of it, like we had talked about, there was $15 an hour wages, $1,400 stimulus plan.
Mm-hmm.
They were looking at expanding unemployment insurance again. And, like a lot of Republicans have come out against this, and actually none, I believe, voted for it. And
None.
We could, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole yet. So please don't lead us down this rabbit hole, because it really bothers me. But we have elected Democrats in office, and yes, I warned everybody I'd fucking bitch about the Democrats a long time ago if they all got in. We have them catering to the most conservative Democrat, Munchin.
Yeah. Joe Manchin.
I'm going to call him Munchin because it sounds cooler. Joe Munchin. He's munching on our fucking rights. Anyway.
Munchausen by proxy.
There you go. Even better. That's a better one. But we're catering to them and the conservatives, and yet none of these fucking assholes are voting. We had one. We got the vote from Joe. Like, oh, thanks, Munchkin, or Munchin. Thank you for that fucking, vote. But we got no Republican votes. So what the fuck? Why are we catering to this? Why are we not changing and saying, okay, Joe, you're gone. We're going to get rid of your ass, and we're going to start bringing in a little bit more progressive people. But we'll get to that later. So the first thing, they stripped out the minimum wage standard.
And the reason they pulled that out is because of the parliamentarian, not any particular votes from any Democrats or anything. So the parliamentarian is a person who is essentially appointed to take care of the entire process that we're doing on here, which is a budgetary process. And so this isn't a standard vote. What it is basically just has to be a bare minimum majority vote. And by doing the budget reconciliation, they have a parliamentarian, they call him, and that's a person who essentially says this bill is valid to be used as a budgetary bill. And that's the reason they pulled the $15 out. So Manchin wouldn't have voted for a $15 minimum wage increase in any way, shape, or form because he's just gross. And Kristen Sinema would also not do that because she is an idiot. But for the Rescue Act that they're putting through, it's the parliamentarian, an unelected and unvoted for appointed person. They decided that having the $15 minimum wage in the bill didn't associate it with the budget enough that it would be allowable. And so that's the reason it was pulled out.
Yep. Well, whatever. I mean, this is my face. This is how I felt when I saw it. Just making sure you all know.
I know.
All right.
It's frustrating.
It is. So the next thing that they pulled out was a student loan provision. It doesn't include student loan forgiveness directly, but it would allow for Biden to try to pass something later on. So that's fine.
Through executive action.
I'm not 100% okay with it. I would rather just see the Democrats get on board, because this feels to me like the Democrats are going, hey, Joe, you're a one-term, maybe two-term president if you live that long. You pass this yourself, so none of us have to, like, pretend like we agree with you on this, because we really don't, because we know what we know what's going to happen when the banks and all these financial institutions find out we support this. So we can't lose funding. So we're gonna tell you to deal with it, and we're just gonna take a step back and say, hey, thanks, Joe. You know, you take the credit, and we'll just not have to worry about the fallout. And that's what this is. You know,
The executive actions are so temporary. Because, I mean, do you think about it, the 100 and 200 executive actions that were immediately taken by the Biden administration to completely cancel out a whole pile of stuff that had been done by the previous administration. Executive actions are essentially reversible by the next presidency when it's a flip to the next, to the other party. So, like,
do you think
you have
student loan debt is? I mean, how does that
Well, that's
happen?
it.
Like,
if he does an executive action, essentially it's a forgiveness action. So he would basically create a forgiveness thing. So like a bunch of people would get in, and they may potentially they get their stuff forgiven, and then as soon as the next president in from the other party, they could stop it. They could stop the bleeding, they would call it, or something
but
along
they
those
can't
lines.
reverse it though.
They wouldn't
right?
like, oh, we forgave you, we're gonna take it back. No, so like the a whole bunch of the executive or a whole bunch of the loan forgiveness stuff that was stopped under Betsy DeVos. Those were those loans. There were a whole bunch of loans that people were just like, this is too much. This is just absurd. And some of those loans were forgiven. There was a process. It took time. It was hard to get, but you had to basically prove that these loans were just egregious. They were ridiculous, and they would just completely obliterate any chance you had to either pay them back or live a normal life. And those people had been given, leniency. And once DeVos got back in, she basically said no more to that. She said that process still existed, but she said we're just not going to approve anyone, and that's pretty much what happened. It just stopped happening. And so like the executive action would be like that, and a few people would get in, but like this needs to be like a across the board, a law to really be like a blanket across the board to really make it happen quickly and fast, the kind of speed that we need for the economy itself. And I don't think executive action is strong enough. I just want to see more law. I want to see more Senate and Congress doing their but
Good luck. You gotta go to Canada for that. That doesn't happen in America. The other major change that they had was to the unemployment insurance, and essentially the Senate bill will extend the federal benefit supplement at $300 a week through September 6th. And they're going to make the first $10,000 received non-taxable.
that's a big deal.
That's actually that's a pretty big deal, because the House didn't have that in there. So I will say that's a win, because I don't know. If you are getting $300 a week, so last year it was $600, right? A week times 52. That's $31,000 they were giving you. So if you didn't work at all and all you got was the unemployment insurance, you only made $30,000 to $40,000 a year as an individual. If you hit the high end, blah 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 blah. So if they're
write off a third
yeah.
to a quarter of your income, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Now, in my opinion, that's not enough. Like, to
No.
me, this is just a slap in the face, because this actually, and this is where they don't talk about this in this article, but guess what affects your Medicaid? Guess what affects health insurance that you may have to pay through the Obamacare program if you pay it, right? This
The
affects
amount of
that. Yes.
Yeah, the amount
your
of income that you have to
level
claim.
just changed because the government gave you $600 a week. Whether you wanted it or not, you got it. And so if you were unemployed and had no other income and you were unemployed the whole year, you got your $600 plus your $300. So you're essentially getting 40 grand, 50 grand a year or something like that, or whatever it was. And they're only going to make $10,000. They're going to kill Medicaid. People are going to lose their Medicaid, and they don't say this here, and that's why I'm not 100% sure.
I don't know
how
where the
that
threshold is.
thing's going to
Yeah, I
work.
was gonna say I don't know where the threshold is
18,000.
where they end. Is it
18,200 for like a family. I think
Oh,
like
man.
like one
that is
kid.
so low. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
I think for an individual with no kids, I think it's between 8 and 13,000. I'm not 100% sure. 13,000 might be. We could look it up in a minute. 13,000 might be the high end, but it's low, man. Like it's low, and food stamps is
That's
even different.
unlivable.
So think about this. Now they're gonna fuck with people's food stamps. They're gonna, and again, I could be wrong. Maybe they'll get lucky. Maybe they'll pass a different thing to fix that. Hopefully, because we can't have all these people getting this money all of a sudden no longer receive food stamps because these people are gonna be homeless. They're not gonna have anything, and then they're not gonna be able to eat. It's gonna be awful. So it's gonna be an awful state.
Hopefully they've got some provisions in these types of things to take care of that. So like one of the things that we run into when these things have to be done so fast is a lot of that small stuff, like the nitpicking over the details. Like when you pass a tax bill at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and then a whole bunch of people realize, holy crap, look at all these new loopholes that we can exploit. The opposite could potentially happen if they don't look deep enough into the situation. Like, hey, we're going to give people a little bit more money in their unemployment insurance, but if they don't word it or write it the correct way, they basically, people could lose something that is even more important when it comes to like food security and all that kind of stuff. Like,
Yes.
I would hope the Democrats are really paying attention to this, and we'll see what happens in the future. But man,
well, maybe our choose to challenge this week is to start calling our senators and representatives out to ask them that question, to say, hey, let's have a conversation about this, because this will impact drastically. And maybe somebody like
I can't call
AOC
any of my
who's-
senators.
Well, they don't care. I know they don't.
Ohio is so bad. They want to remove all of this stuff. They didn't even want to pass the damn thing. They were just like,
Nobody
I
was
had
playing.
dude, I had a moment and someone basically told me that, oh my God, are you guys ready? Are you ready for Uncle Joe's reparations to give all these people the money? And like just a ton of loaded words. It's just like, remember that joke thing I talked about a little while ago? When you hear something and you say, wow, Debbie Downer, you just killed the conversation, because everybody else was just like, good.
Everybody's just cringing, like
but walking away from that conversation, I was genuinely saddened that I had not quickly enough thought to ask him if he had cashed his check from the Trump. I mean,
it just kind of
what's
makes
the
you
difference
wonder.
in all
eh?
reality? It's like it's the other stuff helping all the the red tape stuff that they want to help, and that's inside the bill. That's the stuff that most people have issue with, because there's like all these other pet projects and stuff that Democrats have in there, which I would have preferred to keep this for people and small business, and then all the other stuff. But you can't have, what is it, in Married with Children? You can't have one without the other. That's such a great song, by the way.
Anyway, next I think we'll do a real quick answering conservative questions.
Yay!
So, the question tonight is, why do liberals hate conservative?
That is such a
aggressive, hey?
Just cut through the butter, get right to the point, man.
I guess. Yeah, Keith's like, hey, I got this guy. He came from Twitter. He's blah, 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 blah. And I was like, all right, cool. We'll
It was a conversation that I had with a conservative on Twitter, because they had retweeted somebody saying it, and it was about why do liberals hate America? Why do liberals hate conservatives? And I was like, well, if you were asking an honest question, I'd be happy to have that conversation with you. But the question is worded in a way that's not in good faith anyways. So, if you actually want a question or want an answer in a conversation, go ahead. we'll have that conversation.
Fair enough.
Oh, wow. You're like highlighting me now.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to say, hey.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting.
So,
oh, okay.
He was getting sassy. He took it. Took a sip out of the rocks glass, and it's like, okay, let's just go ahead. Soapbox it. Soapbox this, Canada.
Yeah. So I basically laid out. I said, like, look, you're starting with an assumption, so that's an ingenuine question, and I'd never see this question get asked in good faith. So again, if you want a good faith answer, ask a good faith question, we'll hash it out. And like part of the thing is that I recognize that I have a privilege, and the privilege that I have is that white conservatives will look at me and they'll assume that I'm one of their own or whatever. Because in all fairness, I used to be one of them. Now I'm kind of not in most of the ways, but I still, this is what they see is they see the white guy. So they feel a little more comfortable or whatever. And they just assume that I have a similar outlook as them. Well, it doesn't always go that way, evidently. So I do my best to try to play a little bit of devil's advocate try to use the Socratic method to try to not necessarily attack, but challenge beliefs. Because I know when it comes to conservatives, like we've seen a lot of the articles written about how, conservatives sit there and will say, liberals only care about their feelings. That's how they lead, blah, blah, blah. But in study after study after study, it comes back that conservatives tend to be a lot more reactionary with their emotions than the those who are more on the left. However, as we went through, I said, like at the end of the day, I don't hate conservatives. I mean, I used to be one, and I have friends, I have family and while I do not share their views and see them as repulsive, I do my best to try to remember that the person that I'm talking to has I run with the principle of charity, and I assume that they, like me, simply have their worldview because it's what they think is going to be the most beneficial to people. Now, I know that how they got there isn't by logic, isn't by reason, isn't by actually tried, tested, and proven methodology. It's just assumptive reasoning that gets them there. And I don't want to say it's pity, because it's not. Pity is a horrible thing. But I do want to have that conversation. And we all care about people. We all, like the label of racism or racist, as sexist, as bigot in general, really kind of that causes people to put their guards up. And I mean, I can understand that, if you don't think you're a racist, somebody calling you a racist, you're going to get on the defensive, and trying to delve deeper into those issues. Because, as I've seen, and I hate the fact that I learned this from Ben Shapiro through something that he said. Oh, I know. Trust me. There's a reason I drink, and it's because I have that in my head. In a conversation, he was saying, well, I hate rapists too. I think rapists need to be strung up. And then, of course, the denial of rape culture, which we, of course, know is a big part of the problem. And any conversation about rape culture with a conservative usually gets, rape culture is not a thing. That's not a thing. Because it's a complete and total lack of understanding of the nuance and the deeper issues. And I understand that if you're constantly trying to, make ends meet, you're so much more focused on that. A quick assumption is going to be easier for you to digest than actual critical thinking, critical reasoning. It's hard to actually think things through. And that was kind of why it was easier for me to step away from conservatism, is because I was questioning a lot of why I was where I was, and why my values weren't lining up with what I thought I agreed with. And so just taking that step back and that humility really helped. So at the end of the day, liberals on the whole don't hate conservative people. I think secular humanists tend to have a pretty solid handle on we don't hate the people, we hate the bad ideas, right? We don't hate religious people, but we do have a problem with the doctrines that get really problematic in calling for slavery and genocide. So it isn't the people, it's the ideas.
All right. So on my side, and mine's real quick, and I don't know, is it wrong if I borrow from the Bible? Hate the sin, not the sinner. I don't know. Like, I don't hate conservatives. I hate Trump, and I hate people that blindly follow Trump no matter what. If only if you're willing to sacrifice everything else for your beliefs. So if you become a martyr for your beliefs, then yeah, I have a hard time not hating you. You know, I mean, it's like, oh, you want to make racism strong again? Yeah, I hate you. Go fuck yourself. Moving on. You know, other than that, for me, like, with the question is, I don't hate a lot of people. I probably throw the term around loosely more often than not, but for me, it's really hate the sinner, not the sin. I don't hate the conservative. I hate the ideology. And I hate the two-party system, and I hate corporatism that forces us to live in essentially conservative hell or conservative hell light edition. Lightweight edition. That's it. That's my thing.
Mine's pretty straightforward. There's two things in this question that I don't agree with right out of the gate. And liberals and conservatives as labels, they're not binary. They're just not. There should be 30 parties in this country. There should be 40 different versions of whatever, and we should all be dealing with so many different shades of gray that, you know, people in having a slappy, you know, crazy BDSM dungeon in their house, that should be completely and totally fine. And you know, it's just, in the end, it's and then the other thing I have an issue with is the hate. I honestly think that hate as a word, like the literal meaning, I don't know of too many people who can genuinely pull that word off. That is like this. The semantics of what's happening in that word are very, very powerful. And if you look at the majority of people in this country talking about what Keith said when it comes to the methodology of charity, and what Chris said, mentioning the ideals versus the person, we're all in agreement here that, you know, we don't like some of the more extreme ideas, but people themselves have come to those conclusions for whatever reason. And this question itself puts the conversation in a black and white, and I disagree with that presumption. I disagree with that premise from the beginning, that it is not simply one hating the other or the other hating the other. In the end, what we have is this is just an insincere question, and it's coming from a person that hasn't really thought the situation through. Like, in all reality, there's something that person who would ask that question, if you stripped away everything, there are a bunch of things that all three of us would totally agree that person wants to do. Maybe in the methodology would be different, but the idea, the things that we want to have happen, the strength of probably the manufacturing in the United States, the energy sector in this country, whether or not people have to go through a series of rules and restrictions to become citizens, and what does it mean to be a citizen, and what do taxes mean, like all of these things, like we probably agree when it comes to like everybody putting in their fair share. It's just how you get to that point. And like, if you're gonna say it's love and hate and absolute binary, then, you know, it's insincere. So like, I don't think either side hates the other. I really don't. There's a few people on the edge who love stoking it, and they actually stand to gain financially and powerful from those stigmas. But in the end, this question, I see it everywhere, and it feels like a clickbait hashtag tagline that you would see on a website for like BuzzFeed or something. It's just why do liberals hate conservatives? Blah, blah, blah. And then like a couple of pictures of like some famous person, whatever. I don't know. I just roll over and it's just like, whatever. It's not real.
Fair enough. And I think that's, the real crux of this conversation, right? Is that like, do people really hate, or do we just not like an idea and assign a word?
Do we reach for the top shelf of our words? It was hilarious. Whatever. I mean, as much as Louis C.K. is a martyr these days, some of his stuff that he talked about with language is good. Like, hilarious means you almost lost your mind because it was so funny. Like, you're cracking up, almost hysterical. Some of those, like, hate. Oh, that's the wrong word. Disagree, aggressively disagreement.
Yeah. I mean, look at Kylo Ren. He hated Jedi. Palpatine. He hated Jedi. Oh, there's a card that you could put on in my Star Wars game called Hate, where if you shoot at Kylo, he hates it so much he regenerates a force charge so he can use it against you again. The same.
Shoot that man.
Yeah, shoot at me because I fucking hate you. All right. Sorry. I had to throw that in there. Nobody will know what it means, but I had to throw it in there.
A few people will.
So, the main segment for tonight, and I apologize it took so long to get here, but this is kind of my uninterrupted discussion time that we have. So this is our fun time, boycott time. Discussion about progressive values and anarchy and Marxism.
Voting with your dollar.
And all of that. Yeah, a little bit that, but it goes deeper. We're going to get deeper than that. So essentially, a friend of mine shared
hit
this
all the
with
walls,
me.
do the deepness.
Oh my God. No, that's a horrible song.
Wait, what?
Anyway.
That's a song?
Yeah.
I just knew it as a line from Ugly Americans.
Okay, I don't know what that is, but fair enough. And don't go into what it is because you're going to derail us. And we're here. We're here. We're going to.
We finally got on track.
There's a virtual picket line of what? What is this?
So essentially, what's happening? The idea here is in Alabama, workers at Amazon are trying to vote to unionize. Right? They've been working towards this for quite a while. And if they are successful, they will be the first Amazon employees in the U.S. to unionize. Now, not only is this extremely important because they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, it is important for people's safety. It is important for their health. It is important because it allows them to have a voice that they no longer get. And think of it this way. This is like in your city. If Amazon had a manufacturing or logistics plant, and nothing else exists, where do you go work? You go work there. It's a monopoly. You don't get a choice. You can work there. You can work at the McDonald's. They all pay the same. Amazon pays a little bit better, but you got to work harder. You got to pee in a jug. You got to pee your pants. You got to not take breaks.
You have a crazy restriction because if you do anything, your job security is at risk, and they literally anyone in the city is begging for those positions because there aren't positions and jobs or unemployment is high, and so like people are fighting for these positions, and so right now the employer has the upper hand significantly if there's no union group behind it.
Yes, and that's the idea. So this article came out, and this is a pretty unionized blog where what they want to do is say, hey, in an effort to say fuck you to Amazon, we're all going to not buy from Amazon. We're not going to watch Prime. We're not going to do anything. And we're going to essentially, all we're going to do is just say, hey, this is done in solidarity. Now, I don't know if this, can you hear this? Or you can't hear. They had videos of people, and I thought y'all would be able to hear it, but maybe not.
No, these are people that are making
Shout
the
out
pledge.
from Long Beach, New York. My name's Dan.
And I'm Ann.
And we wanted to express our solidarity to the workers in Bessemer, Alabama, now organizing a union at Amazon. Amazon is one of the largest employers in the world, and Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world. So the inequality...
So these are people submitting videos saying, "Hey, we pledge solidarity," which doesn't
Cool.
seem like there's very many people.
Mm.
FYI.
Shout out from
And so anyway, that doesn't seem like a lot of people, but moving forward, the workers in the warehouse have faced unrelenting anti-union campaigns. They have received texts from Amazon. Get this, text from Amazon telling them about how horrible unions are.
Mm-hmm.
They are receiving work notices inside of their break rooms, restrooms, on doors, and they're even having officials stop the lights and create like a blackout atmosphere so that anybody sharing literature with the cars entering the plant can't see, can't do what they're, trying to do. So
They're actually hiring in union busters too. Like there are
Oh,
people
that's right.
who are being brought in that their job is basically to be an Amazon plant to go in and spread propaganda and bust the unions and say, I don't want this. This isn't what I want. And go in and use some of those tactics or threaten to say, if you do this, you're a piece of crap. And like literally busting the union, busting the sentiment, busting the solidarity. These are some of the effects that they've been seeing all throughout Europe, and using the same tactics they used to use to stop the industrial revolutionized unions from basically starting the 5-day work weeks and stopping children's labor. All of those things the union busters were fighting in the United States and in Europe, and all of these types of things. These same tactics are being used to stop unionization through Amazon's plants and everything. Like, it's crazy. And they're openly they're like, yeah, have you been hiring these people? And basically it's been proven. And Amazon's like, yeah, we don't want unions. What are you going to do about it? I'm a centibillionaire. I have $100 billion. What are you going to do about it? And Elon Musk is the same way. He would fight and he would put people on a rocket ship and shoot them into Mars instead of let Tesla fully unionize. I mean, it's straight up,
Yeah, I know. Didn't he buy
these
stocks
companies
back to prevent some of that?
These companies are essentially acting in just incredibly egregious ways. Like, not like, oh, well, we don't need a union because we treat our employees well. They are literally going in and busting the plans and the efforts of these people. Like, it is subversion, and it's gross. It's bad. It's bad. And unless you're down there in the mix, you don't really understand exactly what it's like. Because I don't think it's like they talk about it when it comes to unions, and life is great until it's not. And unions are there to bring people up. So like the fact that life is pretty good, people are like, we don't need unions. What do we need unions for? Like, life is good. We're doing well. And then when everything gets really, really bad and only a couple people have all the power and money, then I'm like, hey, we should start doing this union thing, trying to build this back. It's like this cyclic thing. And so there's a lot of people worried that this is, it's not even down at the bottom yet. There's people worried that we will see unions further demoralized. And this is a huge, huge turning point potentially to see that kind of growth in some of the biggest companies. I mean, these companies are bigger than countries. So, I mean, this is a massive deal. I support it 100% wholly. And I honestly, this is something I've considered and talked with my wife a few times about getting rid of all of our Amazon subscription stuff. I genuinely don't really.
And think of it this way: like, when I was right out of high school, I drink a lot of Pepsi now, but working in the farming community, farmers are not against cheap labor, right? But what was happening is Taco Bell was using it and taking it to such an extreme that they could be billionaires off of that. So like Taco Bell would essentially pay the workers 4 or 5 cents more and say, well, you can't sell locally. You're going to only sell to us. And they were going to all these parent companies, and then they were owned by PepsiCo. So PepsiCo, or Pepsi essentially, right, owned Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, all these other franchises. So when I first came out, I stopped eating Pizza Hut. I stopped drinking Pepsi. I stopped. Well, I never liked Taco Bell, honestly. So like that was a really easy thing for me to rally against. Like, fuck Taco Bell. Yeah, like I hated that shit. And it's not real meat. It's horrible tacos. No, thank you. It's not even good drunk food. I don't care what any of you all say.
No.
It's horrible drunk food, period. It makes me poop
It's-
like a motherfucker the next day.
It's been a while since I've had that kind of the Taco Bell, so yeah, not a worry here.
Anyway,
I live
so-
my life like Tom Segura, so it doesn't matter what I eat. Everything's gross.
all right, fair enough. And like I purposely go out of my way to not eat Chick-fil-A. I complained when my company bought
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A, and it's funny because a couple of people in the company will make fun of me now. They'll be like, "Hey, sorry, I couldn't respond to your text. I was eating, my Chick-fil-A I got for lunch," and I'll be like, "Oh, good for you. I'm glad you're eating the hate and the tears of all the gay people that are suffering at the hand of Chick-fil-A." And it's funny, like I don't care. And the one lady I texted,
I refuse to go.
the one lady I texted, she ribbed me, and it's funny because like she actually sent me. I guess I didn't know this, but I've been befriending some cancel culture conservatives lately, no matter who it is. Like, I'll argue with you, and if you're reasonable, we're fine. But I'm so sick of seeing Gina shouldn't have been fired. This is essentially Nazism all over again. And this came from a Christian podcaster we used to have way back in the day on Atheist Analysis, right? And like I was probably
You're not talking about
sober.
Max, are you?
Nope, it wasn't Max. No,
Oh.
actually, it was not Max at all. Chris Rosenberg, and
Oh.
Christian pirate radio. That was his thing. Like, he was calling out the Christians we were calling out too. Like, weirdly enough. So like, I bonded with him to some extent. But anyway, whatever. So I was definitely not sober, and he posted this shit about Gina and how they're gonna start canceling Christians again. And I was like, for all of the garbage you preached, all of this, how the fuck can you say this? Go fuck yourself, you fucking piece of shit. This is bullshit, and I'm done. Somebody on that page found somebody I work with, and because it said my company name, like underneath my name, they emailed this person and said, "Hey, I'm friends with you. You're friends with this person. I hope he doesn't work for your company anymore. Look what he said." Now, I didn't call him a whiny little bitch. I didn't call him I just say, "Go fuck yourself. Fuck you, blah, blah, blah."
Mm-hmm.
And this person took offense to it. Like, I hope somebody doesn't have that potty mouth in your work. And it's like, fuck off. I do have a potty mouth. And yeah, if I say it for the people that don't like it, I have to apologize. And if I'm told not to do it, I'd stop doing it. But anyway, so it's just funny because I've been defriending people that are so far removed from the reality. It's not worth having a conversation. And anybody using it for clicks and likes, I'm done. It's done. So you're gone. See ya. Have a nice time. Go get your snake juice somewhere else. And
Well, you hear people saying the same kinds of things about unionization. It's just like,
Exactly.
there's no point.
Yeah.
They're like,
it's
there's no
ridiculous.
point. This is terrible. All the unions do is try to steal from everyone. Well, it's like, do you
And that's-
realize?
That's a frustrating contradiction that you hear out of these blue collar conservative types is, well, if you hate where you're at so much, you gotta work hard to make things better, and then the second
In
you
America,
bring up
we call it
unionize,
pulling you up by your bootstrap. That's what it's called.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you bring up, well, why aren't we fighting for better wages? Oh, there's no point. It's blah, 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 blah. Like every excuse under the book, and then secretly
It'll
the
trickle
reason is
down. You
because
just have
they've
to
been
work
convinced that being anti-union somehow endears them. The whole, if they lick the boot hard enough by rejecting a union.
I remember that.
It's just frustrating. It's like you want things. You say that things will only get better if you put work into it, but you don't want things to get better. So you want things to get better, but you have a defeatist attitude about it. Like where's the consistency? Like, are you saying that you don't actually believe that, or what?
Exactly.
I remember an Animal Farm when they were loading tired Boxer into the truck, and he just said, "I will work harder. I will always work harder." And they loaded him in the van to the glue factory. Like, thank you, work harder, but we are going to exploit that labor. And in the end, it's one of the greatest examples that you can hear. It's just like, if you read that book all the way through, like watching Boxer, and if you see similarities to Boxer and your own life, your labor is being exploited. It's plain and simple. Like if you see parallels there, like the compensation, the kinds of things that unions fight for, and the connotation that unions are basically like, oh, it's allow everybody to be lazy. Yeah, there's a bunch of examples of that. It's one of the reasons why I work in a private company instead of a unionized company, and I had a decision between the two, and I made the decision that I did because there are issues with unions. There are some places where people refuse to do things, and companies where it's just so loaded down in paperwork. But you take those few small things aside and you look at the quality of life that all unions have increased as far as all of the industrialized nations that basically gave workers more power, it by far outweighs any negatives that you got there. And so like I all of the frills and negativity and BS that comes with the union and all difficulty, I still think that it's significantly going to be a thing that could help drive. If it's not going to come politically from the Senate and from the House of Representatives, that the union a growth in union forces could actually drive a growth in the wages that we need. So somebody's got to do it. If Congress can't do it, maybe the unions can.
Yeah, I remember because my first job, well, technically my second job, I worked at a grocery store for like 11 years. We had a union, and overall there were good things to go with the union. You know, like I had a really good paycheck. I had the loopholes in Canadian universal healthcare that things aren't covered, you know, like dentistry or whatever was covered, and I only had to work 12 hours a week. If I were full-time, every couple of years I would have got an extra week of holidays by the time I left. If I had been full-time at that time, I would have had like 6 weeks, of holidays a year. But because I was part-time, it was just calculated out. So each week represents like 2%. So because it would have been 6 weeks, it was 12% of whatever I made through that year. They gave to me as a lump sum the following year for my vacation time. And the union because of the union, that had to be done. Now, that said, the union did have a lot of issues. The one issue that I really had that really pissed me off was they made no announcement about it. They did as little as they were legally allowed to make it known that they were raising union dues.
I remember you telling us
the
about
vote.
This.
Yeah, and the vote was just in the smallest window possible. They did everything to minimize our ability to make it so they couldn't do that. And it's only because I worked directly with the shop steward that I even heard about it, which really pissed me off, and I kind of threw back in their face. Another issue, of course, was, you know, there were things where seniority trounced other factors in terms of doling out hours. And this is where my blue collar sympathies kind of do come with lean towards like the anti-union sentiment, is because, you know, if you've got that coworker who just wants a job or they just show up and you have to do your work plus cover their ass, otherwise you're the one getting in trouble, which I know is dealing with the boss. But still, if you've got a lazy coworker and you've got to make up for them or somebody who's making problems, it's
a culture
really
problem,
reflects
not a union problem.
Yeah. Right, but it's my issue was just the fact that person kind of got protected, and could be given favor if they happen to be senior to me, right? So that was just an issue that I had, and I recognize that that's more of a more local issue and not the overall issue with the unions. So all in all, yes, pro union. That's just my experience with unions and why I can understand why some people might have a problem with unions. So it's trying to communicate that, you know, like we've got to really showcase the fact that this is a workers' rights issue, like the right to unionize.
Is if you want to have a problem with unions, then let's have a discussion about how we could change unions. And you know, because the difference is your experience may be had by some people, it's not the common experience. And we use unions in the early 1900s to break monopoly corporations from basically creating a new set of slaves in the workforce. You're like, oh,
absolutely.
We can't use black people as slaves for free. How do we get white people to be slaves? That's what they did.
How do we get white people to enslave themselves?
Which is true, because I mean, look at us. We buy houses, we buy cars that we can't afford. I mean, we could go down. That's a whole different rabbit hole.
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah. So here's the deal. the trend for this actually came from that blog, right? It did not come specifically from the people saying, hey, we want to unionize, right? And I don't know if this is relevant or not, but it is a little bit to the point where it's saying, okay, hey, this is a pretty big election that's coming up. People boycotting. Is this really going to honestly affect the ongoing vote? Should the unionization effort prove successful, other Amazons could follow suit, right? So this is imperative to some extent, because if this boycott helps them, then other places can get it. If this boycott does jack shit, are these other Amazon places going to get the same treatment? And I say this because I think they need unionization because they're a large corporation. And we could talk about why later on if we really want to. I think it's... I hate pop-ups so much. I don't think this is a discussion or anything that we don't honestly understand, right? This is important because this is a fight for the lower class. This is a fight for the middle class. This is important because Amazon has spent so much money lobbying local governments to change traffic laws and stop propaganda. It's insane. And that is what, drives people to say, let's boycott. Let's do this. Yeah. And I'm saying is, okay.
But what about the tax incentives that these warehouses get? I mean, these cities put forth huge tax breaks and tax incentives to bring these warehouses in. So you have these massive things that come in, they use the infrastructure, they manipulate and abuse the system, and they're not getting the tax influx that's necessary. There's an income tax, but it's not nearly as good as it would be.
But,
blah blah blah.
Okay, but Hannah, the difference is they can utilize that. The difference, and this is where I differ on a lot of things, is to say, hey, let them use that. Let them take that. Go ahead, have that advantage. But you're going to allow unionization. You're going to have a $15 an hour minimum wage. You're going to allow for people to have these certain remedies. And, oh, by the way, you're going to seek out and you're going to find OSHA and all these other government organizations and ensure that you're up to code. Amazon doesn't do any of that, and local governments don't hold them to that, and federal governments don't hold them to that. But this is where I want to get into the crux of this, because we've been boycotting for the last year against police departments, against organizations, against places that say horrible things, against actors, against film companies, and food places like Chick-fil-A. And I'll still boycott them no matter what this article says. I will not eat their fucking food. Not only does it taste shitty, it tastes even shittier because they put like gay people's tears in it to make you like.
It's unimpressive.
Bible verses.
It's unimpressive in general, but still.
Anyway, but okay.
So these guys are saying that boycotting Amazon won't work.
Yes, and they say that because there's a report on Amazon that Atlantic basically released, right? That because the company is having breakneck paces, right, in their fulfillment centers, they've had higher industry injuries. Injuries. I don't know how you say that word, I guess. So they have strict quotas, they enforce all these things, and what's creating an issue is the abysmal labor practices on the floor, right? So let's get through all that, because we all know that we had this discussion a year ago, actually, right?
Yeah, we've talked about this of a variety of times, and so basically, we're curious as to why these guys think that voting with our dollars won't make a difference.
Because the first place where Amazon diversified, and this is where capitalism fails, right, folks? Capitalism allowed Amazon, and because they were a loss leader, their Prime services, they're selling things and free shipping. All of that is a loss leader. I'll lose millions and millions of dollars to be able to take my profits and fund something else. Amazon is the largest web services platform in the world. And cloud computing.
And cloud computing. That's the United States
Yeah.
government uses them for their cloud computing and cloud storage software now.
Yeah.
Like fun.
So we can boycott
Amazon.
them.
Amazon
And
is the
you know what they'll
basis
do?
for U.S. government and a lot
Yeah,
of stuff.
they'll shut all the other. They could shut all the other stuff down and still keep their web services platform. Yeah, Jeff Bezos can't make a couple $1 million a day, but
He makes $10 million.
he doesn't even need that money now. He sure as hell ain't going to need it in a year. And if they could do that, a corporation will do this. And they will not only, and here's the fact, not only will they unemploy millions of people by doing that, by shutting production facilities down, they will literally be able to keep the highest profit margin in that whole company because of the web services. So somebody was smart.
Yeah.
Somebody was a genius. Genius.
Mhm.
And this is why I say that your
Strategic
Amazon
design.
Prime prescription is worth this. Not even 0.5%, not even a 0.5%, not even a half of a 0.5%. That's what the fuck the revenue is worth. Cancel your Prime subscriptions. You still use them. Now you pay shipping. They win. You don't use them. You use somebody else. Look, they've only lost that type of revenue in guaranteed subscriptions. So this article, I'll be honest, I don't like this article a little bit because it uses woke culture and all this other thing. I get it. Like, I actually get it. But the actual discussion about boycotts here and what it does for a long-term solution is a fact. It's a fact how this affects things. And we could talk about how do we have the greatest impact, right? And this is where I disagree again, with the article, because they're trying to convince you to some extent to say, well, what do you want us to do? Right?
I know
What do you
exactly what I want to do.
Because they're telling you where your fatal flaw is.
Yeah.
That the individual response is a collective issue we all have to deal with. All of us.
Yep. And we also
So-
have to have our representatives. The people who we put in charge have to actively enforce antitrust law. It's a thing that we don't do anymore. We were so scared of losing these giant corporations at the end of what I call the globalism boom, right? The dot-com bubble burst in the 2000. Well, the globalism boom burst when it came to the United States being a global leader as far as corporations are concerned, because we can no longer police these companies now that they're so big. They can just pick up their company and pop it off into a digital location in another place on a server and just put some arbitrary address as their home address. And the next thing you know, the United States is legally not entitled to any of the taxes, any of the income, blah, 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 whatever. They're holding these countries and companies and politicians and everybody hostage because they're so big. We actually need to enforce antitrust in the United States, but we also need to enforce antitrust globally. We need to use things like the UN to actually hold these companies that are larger than countries to task. And so, like, this article makes sense in the fact that we no longer police these companies. We literally do not actually try to do anything when it comes to a company being too big to fail. Google, Amazon, Apple, all of these companies are too big to fail. They literally have the ability to change the entire course of the United States economy. I mean, we're talking stupid large amounts of money. And the question is whether or not, if we lead by example and actually put some of these companies to task, actually hold their feet to the fire and say, no, listen, we understand that you are an essential and an imperative part of our economy, but you also kind of need to play by the rules. You don't get to write the rules, because if you write the rules, in the end, there won't be an economy. It'll just be a couple of companies and a whole bunch of really poor people who are working slave labor, slave wages. Because I mentioned that union busters. When we had the union busters back in the day, it was the Pinkerton union busters, and this was a Pinkerton National Detective Agency, and we're using them now. And these people essentially were detectives sent in to find the pro-union workers, highlight them, and essentially remove those bad people. And so, like, those are the kinds of things that that we're doing now. And these are the kinds of things that we realized during the Industrial Revolution when we used to tell children that when you're 7 years old, you need to work 12 hours a day. Like, these are the things that capitalism wants to bring back. Unregulated and totally free Rand Paul capitalism. That's the end. That's the end game. That's what they want. They want the meritocracy to take control and take over, and that's what we're gonna get.
But it's not even a meritocracy, though.
Well, I know that it's all an illusion, and like the only way that you keep people and hold people down is if you literally smush them and destroy them economically. Like, human equality is economic equality. I actually had a post on Bernie Sanders' wall that's like, I don't know, hundreds of upvotes, which is probably one of the most successful things I've ever posted on this page. But basically, I ended a small little point with economic equality is human equality, and unions help bridge that gap. They really do. Like, all of the naysayers and all the people that have problems with it, in the end, they are a major driving force that helps bring all of the things that we think is good, weekends and 8-hour days and all that stuff. That's all because people stood at the front of these giant corporations and said, we're just going to stop you. And I wonder if, if we have that in us still. Do we have enough push left in us to do that and make these changes that are necessary? Because the digital economy is a different world. You know, I mean, a lot of this stuff you can't stand in front of and say, I'm not going to work. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos is like, I got 1,000 servers that are doing all of your work. Why don't you just go home and podcast about it?
Aww.
And I think that leads us into, the discussion, right? The discussion I wanted to have, specifically about what do we do? Because that article, like, I get that article's point. 100%.
Pops a balloon pretty hard.
And, like, I understand their logic in saying, it's nothing but lip service to y'all. Y'all saying, I'm going to boycott you. But, I mean, really, it's lip service. And it's kind of the same way as I could fly a Black Lives Matter flag in my yard. But if I don't see a black person stopped on the side of the highway by a police officer and stop and say, hey, are you okay? I'm not doing anything. I'm just paying lip service to a movement. And we talked about that on this show before. And I'm not saying we're not all guilty of doing that. I'm sure. I boycotted Taco Bell and Pizza Hut and Pepsi for 2 years, and look, it didn't do shit. Obviously, I didn't make enough money to change their thing.
I have never intentionally bought a Hungry Howie's pizza. Screw that guy, but I mean, he's still making tons of money.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with Hungry Howie's pizza. You mean Papa John's?
Oh no, it is. Yeah, it's Papa John's. Papa John's. Either way,
I've had
it's mediocre pizza. It's hard
month.
to mix them up, but yeah. So.
All right. The difference is Papa John's is actually a little bit better than Hungry Howie's, sadly enough.
It's the racism that makes it taste better. Is that what you're saying?
No. It's the variety of toppings and better sauce. Okay, we're going to move on.
That might be why Ohio thinks that Chick-fil-A tastes so good. Dude, I'm telling you, there's a line of people.
Man. Look, they're in Texas. When I was in Texas, right? And like, you can get fried chicken a lot of places. And like, somebody's like, oh yeah, but for lunch there's a Chick-fil-A. Can you pick me up some? I'm like, that's not the fried chicken I want. They're like, oh, it's good fried chicken. I'm like, no.
I will eat fried chicken out of a push cart in a parking lot before I ate Chick-fil-A.
Like, there's got to be another chicken place. There's one called Babe's Chicken in Texas, and I'll tell you what. So I don't know if I told this story, but you walk in, it's not buffet style, but it's kind of like that. So you sit down at a table. Usually you come with a family, and you order your chicken, and you get unlimited sides, but you can't take your sides home. You can only take the chicken home. And they don't give you styrofoam. They give you a plastic clear bag, and that's what the fuck you put your chicken in. So they can see if you're sticking mashed potatoes or green beans or corn or disgusting salad.
You know what they're doing? That's because of the movie The Clumps. When the Nutty Professor and they were like eating all the food and stuffing it in their pockets and everything. It's because of Eddie Murphy.
All right, that could be easily. Anyway, so this individual, Eric Olin Wright, is a sociology professor.
Where?
Well, he's dead, so he's in the grave. now.
So he's
Nowhere.
not a professor anywhere.
He's not.
But this was from 2018. You passed away
Yes,
recently.
so this was before he passed away. He is a sociologist, an educator, specializing in social stratification and egalitarian alternative futures to capitalism. He's known for his diverging from classical Marxism in his breakdown of the working class into subgroups and diversifying held power through varying degrees of class consciousness. He has
Okay.
novels, and these are the things he stretches out when he stretches. This is what he stretches. I can't say that word either. This is what he stressed. There you go. More important. Control over and exclusion from access to economic productive resources.
Mm-hmm.
Location within production relations. Market capacity in exchange for relations. Differential control over income derived from the use of productive resources. And differential control over labor in defining class, while at the same time trying to account for the situation of expert, skilled manager, supervisor, taking inspiration from Webinarian accounts of class and class analysis. Now, I don't know if this guy's a genius, honestly. I just heard about him, but I read through his 73-page book, essentially. This is his last book about how to be an anti-capitalist nowadays, right?
Cool.
And so what he talks about here, and this is where we could spend a whole episode discussing this. Honestly. But what's really unique is that he talks about how do we create and form foundations for equality and fairness, community, and democracy while allowing freedom, right? So he wanted to write something to engage the reader. He wants something to talk about a strategy. And this guy's been going on for years about utopias and everything. Like things people in the 70s and 80s are like, we don't know if this guy is crazy or not, right?
Well, like basically the concept. So, like Marxism itself, what he was trying to do was to create a scientific methodology for economic and classism. So, what he wanted to try to do was like create like a sociology that could be numerically calculated to break down all of the things that we do, why we do what we do, economically and sociologically, and create like formulas, mathematical answers to like what the heck. And in that effort to do that, he created categories and things. People have all kinds of issues with them, but like he was one of the first people to try to create these like equations that we essentially could hang our hats on for. This is this and this is that and this is this, and this guy is kind of in that categorized education strategy, and so insofar that he used Marxism and sociology as a way to like grow these things. So like it says that here he got his BA from Harvard and his another BA from Balliol College in Oxford, and then he got his PhD at University of California, Berkeley. Like these are places that are known for a variety of things. I mean, getting your BA in Harvard is way different than a PhD at California, Berkeley. And Harvard is known for being a little more conservative, and the guys that push the lines when it comes to economic policy like this, Harvard isn't exactly, I guess, preaching about their successful stories when it comes to those guys. So like this guy's pushing the boundaries of what was popular at the time, and I'm curious to see what he has to offer, because everything that I see when it comes to the general information on this guy sounds like it's pretty interesting.
So let's just dive into this a minute. And this is why I want to talk about this. We probably can't get to the last topic of homelessness tonight, but that it all ties into this, and I'll move that to next week. That'll be our topic for next week, because I'm really digging this guy, and I've already started looking up his books to see if they're on Audible, because if I can get a bunch of his books, I'll be binge reading this while I work. But there you go. That's what I do for fun, folks. I binge read Marxist and socialist books. Commentary.
You commie.
Oh man. Oh,
You had me at hello.
Fun life. But his complaint is, even though, and this is our complaint as well, even though capitalism works very well, it helps extend life expectancy, it helps create new innovation, it helps with all sorts of these things. Capitalism also is the work of inflicting poverty. It is the work of saying, no matter who makes the money, we're always going to have people in poverty. And even if they don't bear any responsibility, our morality, it doesn't matter because we just give a flying fuck that we're progressing society. That is capitalism in its barest, truest form, right?
What does Doug Stanhope say? Shouldn't the end goal of all countries be complete unemployment? You've increased productivity to the point where everyone can just stay home and we're all taken care of, right? It's like that's the idea. And so capitalism basically says like, hey, productivity has increased every year for the last 30 years, but minimum wage has gone nowhere. There's a differential there, and there's a bunch of money that is not being attributed to the people who are making those things.
Yes. And he says there's a poster from the 70s that says class consciousness is knowing what side of the fence you're on. Class analysis is figuring out who is there with you.
Ooh. I know Bernie's with me.
That's important, right? Because we have two different motivations, what he's saying, in our class struggles, right? And one of the motivations is it's impeding your material interest. The other side is it's offending you on your moralistic values. And this is where capitalism fails, is it doesn't involve moralistic values, right? And discussing, understanding what this guy does and where he wants to be, right, is saying, okay, how do we fix boycotting Amazon? Because boycotting Amazon will not actually fix what we're doing, right?
They're too ingratiated into the economy itself. They can survive a boycott.
Yes, exactly. And that's his whole point here. And this is why I'm anti-capitalist, I guess. Like, I kind of defined it before, but I've never, made it a big thing. But not only does capitalism violate my morals, it violates my intrinsic value on life, my material interests, because of the fact that I can watch somebody be able to afford a $500,000 house next door, right? And expensive-ass cars, and do whatever they want with their lives. And yeah, maybe they're in debt, but they can do all these things, right? And the idea here is I have to work 4 times as hard to get where they're at. The whole pull you up by your bootstraps thing. Now take that and transcend that down class levels, and you immediately see there is a fairness struggle within this discussion, right? Are you all following, or did I lose y'all?
No, you're good.
No, I'm with you.
So he spends quite a bit on discussing why we should be anti-capitalist, and that, I'm trying to say is, here you go. Because you probably are telling me, all right, Chris, how do we skip ahead to a later chapter? Because we don't need to digress any farther, right? Because there's a lot of different aspects of capitalism that fail us, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, Robert Reich, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he was the United States Secretary of Labor under Clinton. He had a movie that is on Netflix, and that movie is called Inequality for All, and it basically talks about all of these things that we're talking about here when it comes to who's basically in charge of the labor, who's in charge of making money, who's getting what and how and when, and whether or not we talk about any of these whether or not protesting and boycotting works. And in this, he basically comes to the same conclusions that without any kind of real regulation, you see he breaks it up into a series of pillars. I believe it was there was socialism, capitalism, communism, and social. There was four of them essentially, and each one eventually comes to the same conclusion. It's either binary. So that one is a grouping of all the finances. So like capitalism actually turns into all of the money kind of funneling into a certain group of people who are in charge of everything. And then the only one that really didn't do that was social democracy or democratic socialism. And then that one actually kept the power with the people to a certain degree, but allowed for central planning and stuff like that. And it's like capitalism and all of these kinds of things, in the end, what they do is aggregate wealth into a tiny space. And this paper here sounds like it's trying to create a series of laws and rules and regulations to counteract that. It's like, but this is like kind of like a how-to guide. And like, he's really getting into the specifics to like, what should you do besides boycotting? You know what I mean? Like, we're like, well, what can we do? Well, I can just not give them my money. Well, you kind of need to do more than that, because capitalism itself is going to take all the money that you're not spending and also funnel it into the few people who are slowly aggregating all of that money. Like, that's the goal, right? So like, just to stop that and keep that and send that money back down, to actually trickle it down, which never actually happens. You know, it's like, my assumption is this guy is probably in tune with that very much, and he probably like very Chomskyan politically, as far as you know, there's a couple people who are in charge of everything, politics and economics, and if you stop those few people from being in charge and just spread that wealth and that power, then we'll start seeing some changes.
Yep. He breaks it down to three categories essentially, right?
Okay.
The first is emancipating ourselves from capitalism by creating alternatives. That's what he's saying. You got to have, that has to be a building block, right? The second one, which is the most problematic, is creating a strategic idea to erode capitalism, combining using the state in ways that sustain spaces for building alternatives with a wide range of initiatives to fill that space. So again, for example, taking a large pool of ideas and putting them together and allowing them to flourish to find the best one, right? Excuse me. And the last one is that obviously strategies don't happen. If we want to change things, we have to create organizations, parties, movements, right? So Black Lives Matter,
Diversity.
It works great. But if Black Lives Matter and these other organizations like International Women's Day aren't working towards reducing the capitalistic overarchy that is like holding us, you know, hostage, we aren't going to get anywhere. So if they can't do that, we have to find, how do we find a working class that's going to do this, right? And it takes more than just boycotting one. It takes us saying, what are we going to do? Are we going to self-sustain? Are we going to create small collectives inside of our communities to say, fuck Myers, or I guess people don't know who Meyer is, fuck Kroger.
Walmart, Kroger.
Fuck Walmart, fuck Target. Fuck all these other places.
Target.
Fuck Amazon. Do you need Amazon to deliver you this, and that by tomorrow? Or is it okay if I go to a local pet store and they order me my guinea pig drops and it takes 5 days instead of 2 days? Is that okay?
As the pandemic and all that stuff is kind of lessening, we really should be getting ourselves back out into the world, back into small stores, like Small Business Tuesdays or whatever that, you know, your local community has. I guarantee you they have one. You should look it out. Look up your city and Small Business Day or something. Find that out. We pet supply businesses or whatever, like buying things from local companies and all that kind of stuff. Where I live, my wife and I, like, when we'll take the girls, it'll be like a Saturday thing. We'll go shopping at a couple of small little stores. I mean, we
Yep.
don't go to Pet Supplies Plus or PetSmart. We go to a little place down the street. We got harnesses for my dogs, and they were like $4 more there than they were at whatever. And like, but this little tiny company is, you know, I guarantee they're going to do way more for the economy and the local economy than, you know, that big chain will. And so like doing stuff like that, like really changing what you do, and then grow and garden. I swear, oh my God, do something like that. It's so easy to grow herbs and stuff like that. You don't have to buy it from the store.
It is,
dude.
you know, but you understand that everybody has the patience or the green thumb you do. So it doesn't matter. And I'll use a religious example is an opportunity here. In Hudsonville, Jenison area, I don't know which one it is. It's like borderline. There's a church that I don't always agree with their views, but I'll tell you what, they had a community garden. You came, you did not have to donate work. You could get vegetables. I mean, we're talking, instead of building a parking lot, they told people to park the fuck down the street. That's literally what they told people to do. And they had.
I would love to see a church that had park the fuck down the street on that little thing.
You know what I'm saying, though. But, you know, they did not expand their parking lot for their congregation. I would agree with you. That would be epic. But,
taking pictures. That's going on Instagram.
Yep. All right. Maybe I'll put a sign up and we'll claim they said that. But anyway, you know, they kept their back lot storage, which they could sell for housing or anything to pay their church off, and they didn't do that. They have a community garden, and you don't have to go to the church to garden with them. You can come garden and give back to the community, or you can come get free produce. Now, Hudsonville is not super poor, you know, so it's probably not as needed as it is downtown. But when we talk about movements like gardens, not lawns, that's a movement. That's a fact.
Dude,
we should be doing those things. You know,
I want to do that so bad. I want to turn my whole front yard up and grow stuff.
And you can, and if you have too much, you can give it away to the poor places. You can do all these other things. But
there are city ordinances that restrict some people from being able to do that. You can't tear up your front yard. The police will come and tell you not to.
All right,
you have to make sure it's allowed.
You could just do it and say, "What are you going to do? Find me $500? I'm going to do it every year and call it a charity donation." I mean, I'm serious.
I guarantee you the Trump supporters I live next to will send me the bill.
Whatever.
For my
it's
cucumbers.
$500. Call it a charity donation. Yeah. I'm dead serious. And if that's what it means, where you could donate all that food, Hannah, you literally could say, these people are billing me X amount of dollars a year to donate to charity because they want their lawn to look better than me helping them. And then I would go to every neighbor and be like, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Here, if you would like to donate, I'll turn my lawn back, but I need to have 17 times the amount of money that my garden is producing for me to do that. So I'm going to need probably $50,000, let's say. That's a high height. I'm now just exaggerating. But
one of the things that difficulty when it comes to like a garden and stuff, like you can rotate your crops and have a few things that are basically in season and ready for harvesting, but like in all reality, you're not gonna. You may save a couple $100 for the entire season for the produce that you could create on a small yard. Like it's not one of those things where like you can like replace it. It's not
a small yard movement. It's a community movement.
Well,
that's what this is. That's what we're talking about.
That's the thing.
A strategic idea eroding capitalism, combining sustained spaces to create alternatives.
So cool. A whole street with nothing but people who have gardens in their front yard makes me just giddy. That would be so cool. That'd be so cool.
There you go. Anyway, that's the point of this segment. Like, I don't have all the answers. I'm saying here's the avenue we're moving down. Boycotting doesn't work all the time. Is it a good stopgap? Absolutely. Should you continue to boycott? Absolutely. I have already blocked my Amazon. I changed my password so nobody can use my Amazon account all week. So we'll find out, because I'll just see how many people in my house and in my family that share my Amazon account say anything.
Grumpy kids coming your way.
It might be. It won't be the kids. It'll be the adults and all my relatives that share my account that will not like it.
I can't order my underwear on Amazon. This is heresy.
Yep. And anyway, so whatever. the idea though is that we need to create sustainable futures, and this guy is somebody we're going to be looking towards. We're going to be having more conversations about it, and next week we're going to actually discuss homelessness, the homelessness problem, and what his discussion points are for solving that, and how we can benefit from changing it. Because and remember that book I told you about? In a minute, I'm going to go upstairs and I'm going to grab that book, because I've told you for like a year now about a book Jeremiah Bannister gave me. That's this like basically anti-work book, why we shouldn't be working. And I've referenced this book so
like
many
him
times.
who has like totally accepted the socialist
Yes.
handouts for decades. Okay,
Yep.
just wanted to make sure that I was talking about the same capitalist, conservative
Yeah.
pig.
But
Okay.
in fairness, man, in fairness to his point, he goes, I know you have a different belief and political structure than me. I'm buying you something that I feel would benefit your growth in that direction. And it's not a book to convince me otherwise. It's a book that talks about unions and talks about the, less than 40-hour work week and why we're all essentially like stuck to the system, that type of thing. But if we spend any more time on that, I'll go grab the book, and just give me a second. I'm gonna go find that fucking book. I'm gonna put it up while Keith does his quick save here.
Keith.
So I added a little title to mine because I provided 2 links for
you get
2
one
different
link.
apps. Well, there's 2, so deal with it.
You get one.
It's called, they're partner apps. I don't know why it's not in just one. What I'm calling this is turn your old smartphone into a security camera. So I do have my old smartphone.
Oh yeah.
And recently as I mentioned earlier, my wife and I adopted a new kitten. And of course, just for the first week of having her here, we are keeping her not isolated, but when she's not supervised, she is we of course have her in a room all to herself while she adapts, and while the cats that already live here adapt to her, because if you have cats, you understand that they're kind of finicky. And as much as we love
the
them,
cats, how many are we talking?
3. We have
Okay,
3.
that's not.
Yeah. And the oldest one is the cranky one. She doesn't like anybody, or she doesn't like anything else with 4 legs. She only likes humans, and she's kind of mad at me for the fact that we brought the second one in. But because she pretty much just wanted nothing to do with him and always runs and hides, he's kind of lonely, but he's a very social cat. He loves playing with us, loves playing with people, but he's desperate for a companion. So this just fell in our laps. It was a friend was fostering her. And anyways, so when she's not supervised or when nobody's home to be with her, just to make sure the other cats don't accidentally kill her or anything, we have her in the bathroom downstairs. And just to kind of make sure that she doesn't fall into anything or get into any trouble or wreck anything, I was kind of curious about setting up like a little feed, so this way I could just periodically look in throughout the day. Also, she's cuter than hell, and when you're at work, sometimes just like Hannah, you might look at pictures of your daughters while you're at work if you're having a bad day, to remember like just the good stuff you got coming to you at home. So I just used both of these apps, and my old smartphone, I kind of bent a wire hanger and lodged it so this way I could keep an eye over most of the bathrooms. I knew exactly where she was, what she was doing. And it worked out really, really well. You can also do screenshots. I know there are some premium features that you either have to pay for or use the app for a while with different features to earn points to use premium features. One of the funky things that I found was that I could actually turn on the phone on the light on the phone that was the camera, so I could use the flash. I could also switch which camera it was using, so either it was the regular one or the front-facing one, which was kind of neat. Not that it was really useful, because otherwise I was just looking at the roof.
The question is,
nonetheless,
will your old Nokia 800 still work with it?
I mean, no. It's a smartphone. No. It's got to be a more modern smartphone, but it's worked really well, and I used it, and it's cool. It's helpful.
I actually did the same thing with the Samsung tablet with my my youngest. I hooked her up. And so we could basically just monitor anything she said. So the tablet would just turn on and would broadcast to my hearing aids if she made any noise in her room. So like I'd be out hanging out in the yard, nothing, and then my hearing aids would just activate and sound would play from inside the house, and that would be because the little one was making noise. So it was a pretty cool like monitoring thing. It wouldn't tell me like anything about it or do any video. It's just like noise activate, and so it's pretty cool. But
all of a sudden, Hannah's sitting there clawing at his ears, going, "Ah!"
I know, yeah. Did somebody just fart? What was that sound? Yeah. So this one here, did you guys know that Alexander Graham Bell was kind of a gross dude?
Nope.
Yeah, so this guy, Alexander Graham Bell, also known as the inventor of the telephone, had
Was he
this
Canadian
weird.
or American?
As far as I know, it says that prominent proponents of oralism in the United States, like his father before him, Bell spent his life studying the physiology of speech. So, American to the core, and he thought basically speech and speaking and sound and all of these kinds of things were super, super, super important. If you scroll down a little bit further down into this thing, he basically becomes terrified that oralism is now speaking as a dominant method of instruction in schools for the deaf students, and he thought that like for some weird reason that like deaf people were gonna like take over. I am completely and totally flabbergasted by essentially this guy's fear that the deaf people were going to like for some reason take over. So like he is a person who completely supported the idea of eugenics. He didn't support the idea that we should start using like sexual controls, essentially neutering and sterilizing people and men, and some of the more aggressive ideas of eugenics, things that the United States actually used to do to the undesirables when it came to we used to sterilize homosexuals, which why? But they would sterilize.
That's not how that works.
I know they would sterilize. It goes to explain how much people understood about sexual reproduction back in the day. But we would sterilize in the United States, not we as in but the United States would sterilize the undesirables and mentally handicapped people, whatever. But Bell was really interested in using this kind of thing to remove undesirable ethnical elements, and he supported legislation and all kinds of things on that. But he also he published a paper upon the formation of a deaf variety in the human race. He warned that a great calamity facing the nation of deaf people were forming clubs, socializing with one another, and consequently marrying other deaf people. This creation of a deaf race that would grow and more insular was underway, and Bell noted that a special language adapted to use of such a race already was in existence. Sign language. He was terrified of sign language different from English, as French or German or Russian. Some eugenicists called this legislation outlawing intermarriage by deaf people. Like, I did not know that my people were once like the enemy of the state. I don't know. It's a thing about history that I was caught by surprise for. Like, I know that people have an issue back in the day with like visual things and hearing things and speech things, like just sensory issues. And are you as much of a human, or you have some kind of psychological, is your brain malformed or whatever, when they didn't understand these kinds of things back in the day. But I didn't know that like deafness was something. Well, I didn't know deafness was something that was included in the eugenesis situation.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why? Like, there's no threat there. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah. Like, all right. So I have a quick question. What does British subject in Canada mean?
British subject?
Yeah, it's called a British subject in Canada. What does that mean?
Oh, a British subject means that someone is under the control of the British.
Oh, okay.
Right, well, then,
like a citizen of Britain in Canada.
So you Canadians have skated this. He's originally from Scotland, but he died in Canada. He proposed all his crazy shit in Canada, not America. All Canada, all British. but at least he wasn't from Canada originally. I'm sorry. I had to throw. I'm sorry. That's just me picking at you.
It's worth noting.
Yes, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
felt
I'm
the
not.
need. Anyway, my quick save is We Are Mario.
Let's go.
Let's go. Yep. In Japan, they have a Super Mario World theme park. And my son
Dude.
sent this to me today.
It looks
Right.
cool.
And he
It
said,
looks really cool.
Dad, when the pandemic's over, you're going to take us here, right? And I was like,
Dude,
I don't know if I can afford to go to Japan, but I
the
mean,
whole
come on,
family
it
to
looks pretty
Japan.
awesome.
That's like a $20,000 trip, dude. But that would be the coolest thing ever.
Oh yeah.
Well, I heard Hannah's financing my family going to Mario Kart World. I mean, like, I showed this to my daughter, and she almost like pooped her pants. I'm dead serious. Like, she was like, "Holy crap!"
Dude, it's
She-
cool.
She just could not believe that. And I don't know. So that's my quick save. It's nothing special. It's very ridiculous.
No, it's amazing and awesome. That is one of the coolest things ever. I've been watching the Mario theme park thing for a while. They've been like doing announcements and stuff. It looks so cool.
I mean,
I'm not
it's
even a
just-
huge Mario fan. I'm like,
It's still really cool though.
We are Mario. It's kind of like the Star Wars tag. We are the Republic. We are all the Republic. Well, we are all Mario. That's. I don't know. I was very excited by this personally. So.
It's funny. The capitalists are, I guess, utilizing the socialists and the communists. It's like we are all one. Yeah, but are we?
Socialism for some, capitalism for everybody else.
Mm.
Is
Yeah,
that how that works, Keith?
it is. The Walton family
Unfortunately.
is like, yes, we should definitely accept capitalism for us and socialism for all of our workers.
Yep. Speaking of socialism, here is the book I've been talking about that I finally pulled out of my car. It's called Work.
This
was
is something that
not
was given
mine.
to you. This is something that was given to you by Jeremiah before
Yes.
he turned into
Yep.
a crazy person.
Well, no, he was always a crazy. And he's highlighted phrases in here for me, like all over. Like he's actually highlighted shit for me to read. Like, here's this.
He highlighted
discussion.
Obama's face.
Ow. Oh my God. Fuck off.
I'm assuming that was
Here you
Obama
go.
there.
At the top, who wields the ultimate power in the capitalist system? Is it the head of the state? They seem to rule only to be pests of the wealthy. Whose interests do they protect? Is it the wealthiest ones? The magistrate who owns corporations and draw profit from 1,000 shrewd investors? They still have to scramble to maintain their position. Has there ever been an autocrat as tyrannical and destructive as the market? No, folks, there has not been. The market is the ultimate tyrant in our world.
Definitely an autocrat, that's for sure.
Ugh, I don't know. Anyway, I there you go. There's proof. I have it. I do own not very many books, but one of the books I own is pretty socialist. Between that and the other book, like, I mean, I read this, I think it was 6 years ago is when I read this, and I've referenced part of it from here or there. But the big idea here is and maybe I'll buy a copy of this and send it to each of you. Would you guys read this if I bought it for you?
Current favorite
Yeah, sure, why
on
not?
my end. I will probably read that. This one's cool too.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll look at it.
And we've talked about book reviews how many damn times and we never do them. So maybe we should. Maybe that's what we should do. Is like pick a segment.
Ooh,
There you go. That's a really good book. I like that book. Actually.
that's a good one.
I've read that one.
Yeah, maybe we should do some books reviews and stuff. I'm currently going through gardening books right now, but
Well, no,
I
don't
guess
wanna
I could
do
bring
that
out.
book review.
Yeah, no, not so much on show. Maybe we could do that something that we each put together digitally.
Fair enough. Otherwise, what we could do is relate it to the topic at hand. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode of Cellar Door Skeptics, right here, right now, in the 21st century. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Revolution.